The rain pelted down relentlessly on the grimy streets of Forth, a sprawling industrial planet known for its cruel underbelly. Dr. Eli Morrow, a human medic with a reputation for treating the galaxy's forgotten, moved quickly through the crowded slums. His clinic, a sanctuary for the desperate, was small but functional. A beacon of hope in an otherwise desolate district. He had just finished a grueling shift when a commotion caught his attention. A group of aliens huddled in a dark alley, whispering urgently. Their tones were hushed, their body language wary. "What's going on?" Eli asked, his sharp eyes scanning the scene. The crowd parted, revealing a figure slumped against the wall, a heavily pregnant alien woman, her skin pale and translucent under the flickering neon lights. She was clearly Vandari, a species known for their fragile build and luminous silver-hued eyes. "She's dying," one of the onlookers muttered, "and she's carrying a child. But no one will touch her. Her master has forbidden it." Eli's jaw tightened. Slavery was technically outlawed on Forth, but enforcement was lax and the slave trade thrived in the shadows. This woman, abandoned and injured, was clearly a victim of that brutal system. Without hesitation, Eli knelt beside her, his medical kit already in hand. "What's her name?" he asked. "Mila," a timid voice replied from the crowd. "She's one of Thrax's slaves." Eli's stomach turned at the mention of Thrax, a notorious slaver with a reputation for cruelty. Ignoring the murmurs of protest, Eli focused on Mila. Her breathing was shallow, and her swollen abdomen indicated complications. She flinched as he touched her arm. Her silver eyes filled with fear. "You're safe now," Eli said gently, his voice steady. "I'm here to help." Eli carried Mila to his small clinic, shielding her from the rain and the curious eyes of the crowd. Once inside, he placed her carefully on a treatment bed and began a thorough examination. Her injuries were severe. A deep gash on her leg was infected, and her body showed signs of malnutrition and physical abuse. The real concern, however, was her pregnancy. The fetus was under stress, and without immediate intervention, both lives were at risk. "Mila," Eli said softly, trying to keep her conscious, "can you tell me what happened?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I tried to run. He found me and punished me, left me to die." Eli clenched his fists, anger bubbling beneath his calm exterior. "You're not gonna die," he promised. "Not while I'm here." Working with precision, Eli cleaned and stitched the wound on her leg. He administered antibiotics and fluids, carefully monitoring her vital signs. Her condition was fragile, and he knew he was walking a fine line. As the hours dragged on, Mila's strength began to falter. Eli noticed signs of preterm labor, a dangerous development given her weakened state. He adjusted her treatment, stabilizing her as best he could. "You're strong, Mila," Eli said, his voice filled with quiet determination. "But I need you to keep fighting, for yourself and your child." For the first time, Mila met his gaze, her silver eyes brimming with tears. "Why are you helping me? No one else would." Eli hesitated before replying. "Because you deserve better than this. You deserve a chance." As Eli worked tirelessly through the night, a sense of unease settled over him. He knew Thrax wouldn't take kindly to someone interfering with his property, but Eli refused to let fear dictate his actions. Mila drifted in and out of consciousness, her breathing steadier now but still labored. Eli sat beside her, his resolve unwavering. He had faced challenges before, but this was different. This wasn't just about saving a life. It was about defying a system that thrived on cruelty and indifference. As dawn broke over IV, Eli knew one thing for certain. Mila and her unborn child had become his responsibility, and he would do whatever it took to protect them. As dawn broke over IV, Dr. Eli Morrow emerged from his small clinic, the weight of the previous night still heavy on his shoulders. Inside, Mila rested fitfully, her fragile body stabilized but far from out of danger. The memory of her whispered words haunted him. "He left me to die." Eli's thoughts were interrupted by a familiar voice. Kara, a local vendor and an informant in the underworld, approached cautiously. "You've stirred the hive, Eli," she said, her tone laced with worry. Eli turned to her, his jaw tightening. "What do you mean?" "Word spreading fast. Thrax knows you took Mila in," Kara replied. "He's furious, says you've stolen his property." Eli's blood boiled at the word property. "She's not property, she's a person." "Tell that to Thrax." Kara shot back. "He's put a price on her head, and yours. You need to be careful, Eli, he'll come for her." Eli nodded, his resolve hardening. Let him try. I won't let her die. True to Kara's warning, it wasn't long before Thrax's men arrived at the clinic. 3 towering enforcers barged through the entrance, their presence menacing. Mila, still weak, stirred at the commotion, fear etched into her pale features. Eli stepped forward, blocking their path. This is a medical facility, he said firmly. You have no right to be here. The leader of the group sneered. You've got something that belongs to Thrax. Hand her over and we won't hurt you. She doesn't belong to anyone, Eli shot back, his voice like steel. Now leave, or I'll make you leave. The tension in the room was palpable. The enforcers exchanged glances, clearly weighing their options. Before they could act, Eli subtly activated a small device on his wrist, an emergency signal linked to the local authorities. You've got 30 seconds to leave, Eli warned, or we'll have company. The enforcers, sensing the trap, retreated with snarls of frustration. But their parting words were clear. This isn't over, Doctor. After the enforcers left, Eli returned to Mila's side. She clutched his hand weakly, her silver eyes filled with worry. You should have let them take me, she murmured. They'll only come back stronger. Eli knelt beside her, his gaze steady. I didn't save you just to hand you over. You deserve a chance to live, free from fear. Mila's lips trembled, and for a moment, her resolve wavered. Why? Why would you risk so much for someone like me? Eli hesitated, searching for the right words. Because no one else will. And because you and your child deserve better than this galaxy's cruelty. Knowing Thrax wouldn't back down, Eli prepared for the inevitable confrontation. He fortified the clinic as best he could, installing makeshift barricades and booby traps. He also reached out to Kara, who helped spread the word among Crission 4's underground network. If Thrax's men come back, we need eyes and ears on them, Eli explained. You're insane, Kara muttered, but there was a glimmer of admiration in her voice. But I'll help. Mila deserves a shot. As night fell, Mila stirred from her rest, her strength slightly improved. She watched as Eli adjusted medical equipment and organized supplies. Despite the danger, his determination was unwavering. Why do you fight so hard? She asked softly. What drives you? Eli paused, the question catching him off guard. Because I've seen too many people left to suffer when someone could have helped. I won't let that happen to you. Tears welled in Mila's eyes. You're the first person who's ever looked at me like I matter. You do matter, Eli replied, his voice steady. To me, you matter. As the night deepened, Eli couldn't shake the feeling that something was coming. The streets outside grew quieter, the usual hum of Crission 4 replaced by an eerie stillness. Mila, sensing his unease, reached for his hand. Whatever happens, thank you. For everything. Eli squeezed her hand gently. We're not done yet, Mila. Not by a long shot. Together they prepared for the battle they both knew was inevitable, their bond growing stronger with each passing moment. The fight for Mila's freedom and her life was just beginning. The calm was shattered the following evening when Thrax's forces arrived. The low hum of engines announced their presence as armored vehicles surrounded the clinic, their floodlights illuminating the small building like a beacon. Eli stood at the reinforced door, watching as the mercenaries exited the vehicles, armed to the teeth. Dr. Morrow, Thrax's voice boomed from a loudspeaker. The slaver, cloaked in dark, ceremonial armor, stepped into view. His towering frame and menacing presence silenced the street. You've meddled in my affairs for the last time. Hand over Mila, and I might let you live. Inside, Mila clutched her swollen abdomen, her silver eyes filled with terror. You'll kill us both, she whispered, her voice trembling. Eli knelt beside her, his voice calm but firm. Not while I'm here. Stay hidden. I'll handle this. Thrax's patience ran thin. With a wave of his hand, his men advanced on the clinic, their weapons primed. Eli, using the makeshift defenses he had set up, activated a series of traps. Explosions rocked the perimeter as tripwires detonated, scattering the first wave of attackers. Inside the clinic, Eli monitored the situation through a series of makeshift surveillance feeds. He grabbed his blaster, a relic from his days in the Earth Colonial Militia, and prepared for close combat. Thrax's voice cut through the chaos. You can't hold out forever, human. You're just delaying the inevitable. Maybe, Eli muttered, his jaw clenched, but I'll make you regret coming here. Thrax's forces regrouped, launching a coordinated assault. Eli engaged them in the narrow corridors of the clinic, using the cramped space to his advantage. He moved with precision, his blaster taking out attackers one by one. Despite his skill, the overwhelming numbers began to take their toll. A grenade detonated near the clinic's back wall, creating an opening. Thrax's enforcers poured in, forcing Eli to fall back toward Mila's room. "Mila," he called out as he barricaded the door. "Stay behind me." Mila, despite her fear, refused to be a passive observer. She clutched a makeshift weapon, a steel rod Eli had given her, and stood ready to defend her unborn child. As the attackers breached the barricade, Eli and Mila fought side by side. Eli's precision and Mila's fierce determination surprised the mercenaries, slowing their advance. In the chaos, Kara and a small group of locals arrived. Word of Thrax's attack had spread, and the underground network Eli had cultivated came to his aid. Armed with whatever they could find, they launched a surprise counterattack flanking Thrax's forces. Thrax, enraged by the resistance, entered the fray himself. His imposing figure stormed through the clinic, his energy blades slicing through obstacles with ease. He reached the door to Mila's room, where Eli stood waiting. "You've gone too far, Doctor," Thrax growled, his blade crackling with energy. "Step aside." Eli raised his blaster, his hand steady. Not a chance. The clash between Eli and Thrax was brutal and personal. Thrax's strength and skill with the energy blade made him a formidable opponent, but Eli's training and determination kept him in the fight. The confined space of the clinic worked to Eli's advantage, limiting Thrax's movements. "You think you can protect her?" Thrax sneered, swinging his blade. "You're just a human, a speck in the galaxy." Eli dodged the strike, firing a shot that grazed Thrax's armor. "And you're just a coward hiding behind slaves." The fight raged on, each blow and shot echoing through the clinic. Mila, watching from the corner of the room, clutched her stomach as another contraction racked her body. As Thrax lunged for a finishing strike, Eli sidestepped, using the momentum to drive a shard of broken metal into Thrax's exposed side. The slaver roared in pain, dropping his weapon as he staggered back. "You've lost," Eli said, his voice low and unyielding. "Leave now, or you won't leave at all." Thrax, bleeding and weakened, glared at Eli with a mix of hatred and disbelief, but the sounds of Kara's reinforcements pushing back his men forced his hand. He retreated, shouting to his remaining forces to fall back. With the attackers gone, the clinic fell into an uneasy silence. Eli collapsed against the wall, his body aching from the fight. Kara entered, her face a mix of relief and concern. "You're insane, Eli," she said, helping him to his feet. "But you did it." Eli nodded, his thoughts already on Mila. He rushed to her side, finding her pale and breathing heavily. "The baby," she whispered, her voice weak. "It's coming." Without hesitation, Eli began preparing for the delivery. Despite his exhaustion, he focused entirely on Mila and her child. Hours later, as dawn broke, the cries of a newborn filled the room. Mila, cradling her child, looked up at Eli with tears in her eyes. "You saved us," she said, her voice trembling. "Both of us." Eli, his heart full, smiled. "No, Mila, you saved yourself. I just helped." As the sun rose over Crisian Forth, the clinic stood battered but unbroken, a symbol of resistance and hope. Mila, her child in her arms, sat beside Eli, the two of them looking out at the quiet streets. For the first time in a long while, Eli felt a sense of peace. The fight wasn't over, but they had won a crucial battle, and together they would face whatever came next. In the days following the attack, Dr. Eli Morrow worked tirelessly to repair the clinic and stabilize the lives that had been uprooted by Thrax's assault. The damage was extensive. Walls had been blown apart, medical supplies were scattered and destroyed, and fear still lingered in the air. Mila, now recovering after the birth of her daughter, Eris, was both a patient and an integral part of the rebuilding effort. Despite her weakened state, she insisted on helping Eli and the small group of rebels who had come to their aid. "You need rest," Eli told her one evening, as she struggled to move a stack of salvaged supplies. Mila looked up at him, her silver eyes firm. "I won't rest until this place is safe again. It's not just about me anymore. Eris deserves a future where she doesn't have to hide." Eli felt a surge of admiration for her resilience. "We'll give her that future. Together." As word spread of Thrax's retreat, more locals began to rally around Eli and Mila. Slaves, refugees, and outcasts found their way to the clinic, seeking sanctuary and offering their skills in return. Among them were engineers who helped reinforce the clinic, traders who brought much-needed supplies, and even a few former soldiers who offered to train the growing resistance. Kara, the informant who had played a key role in repelling Thrax's forces, emerged as a leader among the newcomers. "You've started something bigger than you realize, Eli," she said one evening as they reviewed a map of the district. "People are finally standing up because they see you're willing to fight for them." Eli shook his head. "I'm just a medic. I didn't ask for this." "Maybe not," Kara replied, her expression serious. "But you've given people hope. That's more than most leaders can say." While the clinic became a hub of activity, Mila began to find her voice among the refugees. Her experience as a slave gave her a unique perspective, and her bond with Eris fueled her determination to fight for a better future. One evening, as the group gathered to discuss their next steps, Mila addressed them for the first time. "Thrax isn't just my enemy," she said, her voice steady despite the emotion in her eyes. "He represents everything that's broken in this galaxy, oppression, cruelty, and fear. But we have something he'll never understand: unity. If we stand together, we can take back what's ours." Her words resonated deeply, drawing cheers and renewed resolve from the crowd. Even Eli found himself inspired by her strength. "You're a natural leader," he told her later, as they stood by the clinic's entrance. Mila smiled softly. "I've spent my whole life being told I was nothing. Maybe it's time I prove them wrong." As the clinic flourished, Thrax was not idle. Humiliated and furious, he gathered his remaining forces, bolstered by mercenaries from across the system. His network of slavers had been disrupted by Eli's actions, and he was determined to make an example of the human medic and the rebellious woman who had defied him. The first sign of trouble came when a courier arrived at the clinic, bruised and battered. "Thrax is coming," the young alien gasped, collapsing into Eli's arms. "He's bringing everything he has. You need to leave." Eli's jaw tightened. He glanced at Mila, who was holding Eris close. "We're not running," he said firmly. "If we run now, he'll destroy everything we've built." Kara nodded in agreement. "We'll fight, but we need a plan." The clinic became a fortress overnight. Engineers worked tirelessly to install reinforced barriers, automated defenses, and traps throughout the surrounding area. The former soldiers trained the refugees in basic combat, while Eli and Mila organized medical supplies and evacuation plans for the vulnerable. Mila, despite her exhaustion, took an active role in preparing for the battle. She trained alongside the others, her determination to protect Eris driving her forward. "I won't let him take her," she told Eli one night, her voice trembling with emotion. "You won't have to," Eli promised, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We're in this together." Thrax's forces arrived under the cover of darkness, their vehicles rumbling through the narrow streets. Floodlights illuminated the clinic, and the slaver's voice boomed over a loudspeaker. "You can't hide behind your walls forever, Moro. Hand over Mila and the child, and I might spare the rest of you." Inside the clinic, Eli addressed the defenders. "He wants us to fear him. But we're stronger than that. Stick to the plan, and we'll make him regret ever stepping foot here." The defenders cheered, their spirits bolstered by his words. As the first wave of attackers advanced, they unleashed a coordinated counterattack. Traps exploded, barricades held firm, and the defenders fought with a ferocity born of desperation. Despite their initial success, Thrax's forces began to overwhelm the defenses. The slaver himself led a charge, smashing through the outer barriers with a powerful exosuit. His sights were set on the clinic, and on Mila. Eli confronted him at the entrance, his blaster raised. "You're not getting past me," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos around them. Thrax sneered. "You're just a medic. Do you really think you can stop me?" Eli fired, forcing Thrax to dodge. "I think you've underestimated me." The two clashed in a brutal fight, Eli using his wits and the environment to counter Thrax's brute strength. Meanwhile, Mila rallied the defenders inside, her voice cutting through the noise. "Hold the line. Protect each other." As dawn broke, the battle reached its climax. Thrax, battered and enraged, faced a united front of defenders led by Eli and Mila. With one final push, they forced him to retreat, his forces shattered. The clinic was scarred but still standing, a testament to their resilience. Mila, holding Eris, stood beside Eli as they watched the survivors regroup. "We did it," she said, her voice filled with awe and exhaustion. Eli nodded, his hand brushing against hers. "We're still here, and so is hope." But they both knew this was just the beginning. The fight for freedom wasn't over. But together, they had proven they could stand against even the darkest odds. The clinic was quiet in the wake of battle, but the silence carried the weight of sacrifice. Smoke still lingered in the air, and the makeshift walls bore the scars of Thrax's attack. Survivors gathered in the central courtyard, their faces a mixture of relief and grief. Eli Morrow moved among them, tending to the wounded with steady hands despite his own injuries. The battle had taken a toll on him. His body ached, his blaster burns were hastily bandaged, and exhaustion gnawed at him, but his focus remained on the people who had fought beside him. Mila sat near the clinic entrance, her daughter Eris cradled in her arms. Her silver eyes followed Eli as he worked, her heart swelling with gratitude and something deeper she couldn't yet name. "You need to rest," Kara said, approaching Eli with a stern expression. "You've been on your feet for hours." "I'll rest when everyone's stable," Eli replied, his tone leaving no room for argument. He turned to Mila, offering her a tired smile. "How are you holding up?" Mila looked down at Eris, her voice soft but resolute. "We're alive because of you. I'll never forget that." Meanwhile, in the shadows of Krishon 4, Thrax seethed. His forces had been humiliated, his reputation as a feared slaver shattered. In his hidden compound, he assembled what remained of his resources, including a group of mercenaries willing to fight for the promise of riches. "This isn't over," he growled, his voice echoing in the dimly lit room. "They may have survived, but I'll make them wish they hadn't." Thrax's lieutenant, a reptilian alien named Vorath, hesitated before speaking. "The rebels are stronger than we anticipated. Perhaps it's time to cut our losses." Thrax slammed a fist onto the table, silencing him. "No. This isn't just about them. It's about my name. I'll burn that clinic to the ground, and I'll drag Morrow and the woman to their knees." His orders were clear. Prepare for a final assault, one that would leave no survivors. The warning came from Kara. She burst into the clinic late one evening, her breath labored and her face pale. "Thrax is coming. He's regrouped, and he's bringing an army. This time, he's not holding back." Eli immediately called a meeting with the defenders. "We've held him off once," he said, his voice steady. "We can do it again. But this time, we'll need to hit him before he hits us." The defenders devised a bold plan, a preemptive strike on Thrax's compound. Using the intelligence Kara had gathered, they would infiltrate the slaver's base, disable his weapons, and force a confrontation on their terms. Eli led the team, with Mila insisting on joining despite his protests. "This fight is as much mine as it is yours," she told him, her voice unwavering. "I won't stand by while others risk their lives for my freedom." Kara and a small group of fighters remained behind to protect the clinic, ready to hold the line if Thrax's forces struck early. Under the cover of darkness, Eli, Mila, and a small team of rebels approached Thrax's compound. The air was thick with tension as they navigated the labyrinth of corridors and guards. Mila, her movements cautious but determined, proved invaluable, using her knowledge of the slavers' operations to guide the team. When they reached the armory, Eli set the explosives while Mila kept watch. Her heart pounded as footsteps echoed nearby. "Hurry," she whispered, gripping the weapon Kara had given her. The detonation was precise, crippling Thrax's supply lines and drawing his forces into disarray. Eli and Mila led the charge toward the command center, their determination pushing them forward despite the odds. Thrax awaited them in the central chamber, his hulking frame illuminated by the glow of the control panels. His mercenaries flanked him, their weapons trained on the intruders. "You've caused me enough trouble, Morrow," Thrax snarled, his eyes narrowing at Eli. "This ends now." Eli raised his blaster, his voice calm but firm. "You've enslaved and terrorized enough people. It's over, Thrax." The room erupted into chaos as the two sides clashed. Mila fought beside Eli, her strikes fueled by years of oppression and a newfound resolve to protect her child. Thrax, wielding his energy blade, proved a formidable opponent, his brute strength forcing Eli to rely on speed and strategy. As the battle raged, Vorath turned on Thrax, his loyalty broken by the slaver's arrogance. "Your reign is over," he hissed, joining the rebels and tipping the scales in their favor. With Vorath's help, Eli managed to disarm Thrax, pinning him against the wall. Mila, standing beside him, leveled her weapon at the slaver. "This is for all the lives you've destroyed," she said, her voice steady. Thrax sneered, but his bravado crumbled as Mila fired, ending his reign of terror. The rebels returned to the clinic as heroes, their victory marking a turning point for Christian 4. Slavery rings were dismantled, and the oppressed began to reclaim their lives. Eli and Mila stood together in the courtyard, watching as the people celebrated. Eris, cradled in Mila's arms, cooed softly, her tiny hand reaching for Eli. "You saved us," Mila said, her voice filled with emotion. "Not just me and Eris, but everyone." Eli smiled, his hand brushing against hers. "We saved each other." As the stars lit up the night sky, the clinic stood as a symbol of hope and resilience, a place where love, courage, and unity triumphed over the darkest of evils. Together, Eli, Mila, and their growing family prepared to face whatever challenges the galaxy had yet to throw their way.